and civil society space on matters of the Summit of the Future. We will then listen to Dr. Home today, who will talk to us about the question of authentic security as a contrast to the SRHR wave that is being pushed by the UN system. Okay? The bulk of this audience is meant to be youth. So after listening in to Dr. Home, keep your questions at hand and engage him when he's done or as he goes along. We will then listen to World Youth Alliance, the youth group that is doing advocacy already within the UN system. Okay, so they will share with us what they do and how they do what they do within the UN space. I will then talk about the summit in summary on how it is going to be part of what we do. In the afternoon, we will have a panel discussion. There are quite a number of people coming from other countries to attend the CSO conference in Beijing, and they are pro-life and pro-family. So they will be with us in the afternoon, and they will share with us what the experience is before coming to Nairobi, what they expect out of the summit, and what they would like us to do after the summit. So that's what the panel of tomorrow will be like. Tomorrow, in the morning, I hope that the young people will assemble earlier than they have, because the real work for the young people is tomorrow. We need an outcome document that will be declared by young people, clarifying the issues in the Summit of the Future document, affirming their position on matters life and family, and disassociating with what is controversial, but affirming the values that protect life and family. So the outcome document for our gathering, we might be few, but it has international impact if we put our brains in it. So welcome, Dr. Home. I'd like to ask someone to do a prayer for us. Would you like to lead us in a prayer? Come.
So good morning. As you have been told, my name is Wahom Mengari, and I have some titles I'm very proud of that keep me going and contribute to the work that I do. I am a child of God, and I am a Christian of Gikuyu extraction, so my tribe is Gikuyu. I'm the husband of Mercy. I am the father to Ngari, Winnie, and Dodoni. I'm the grandfather to Dodoni and Washera. And I'm also a gynecologist. So I have dedicated my life to look after the woman. And family is very dear to me. And we'll start our reflection with the question of whether the truth is relative or it is objective. And it is very important for all of us as young people to know this. Is there my truth and your truth? And the picture that is usually used for this is this picture here, where there are two people who are arguing whether this is a 6 or a 9 that is written on the ground. Is it a 6 or a 9? This fellow says it's a 6, this one says it's a 9. Both of them are correct, isn't it? Yes, so the conclusion of that picture is, just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. Okay? So the thing is, I could have something I believe in that you may not believe in, and you need to respect it. That is the whole essence of this argument. But then the question is, the person who wrote that digit on the ground, could he have written both a 6 and a 9? You see, we have to go beyond the argument of the two people, isn't it? They are arguing whether this is a 6 or 9, but it was written by someone. Could the person who wrote it have written both a 6 and a 9? You guys kind of want to think.
Sister, go over it again. They're still sleeping, these people. Some people arrive very early in the morning at 4.
Yes, I was hoping for some engagement, but if you don't engage me, I will then move on. Now, I will have this shared with you, so don't struggle. It's a lot of information we are going to cover. Don't struggle writing everything down. You get the notes. Just write your questions, because it's supposed to be reflective. The person who wrote this on the ground could not have written both a 6 and a 9. He must have intended it to be one or the other, isn't it? So for us to end this argument, we must determine what was written. We must seek the truth, isn't it? So the secret is to look at these two characters from above. And this guy in blue is the one who is seeing a 9, the guy in blue is the one who is seeing a 6. Yes? Then we discover that there are actually other digits written on the ground. And now we know what the true digit is. Is it a 6 or is it a 9? It is a 6. Now, anytime you have an argument with a friend of yours, or somebody has brought in an issue that is causing debate and heat instead of light, always know that you haven't found the truth. You would need to find the truth for you to complete that discussion. So, if you look around you now, just look at the people around you, look at what you can see, the chairs and the seats and the windows. What would you say about you? Who are you? How would you compare yourself compared to the physical environment? It's not a trick question. Are you a chair? Are you a table? Are you curtains? Are you windows? What are you? You're a human being. Okay. So if you then look at the next one, what did I do? So you're a human being. Very good. What else have you noticed? If you now look at the other human beings next to you, what do you notice? Sorry? Some are male, some are female. And even your skin colors don't look the same, isn't it? So male and female, different skin colors. So you guys are doing very well. Is maleness and femaleness limited to human beings? No. So the others, even plants have male and female. True? Okay. So now the next question then would be what sex is. And sex has only two definitions. One is the state of being male or female, and we believe that we, as human beings, we are made body and soul, that there is that within us that doesn't die even at physical death, isn't it? And sexual intercourse. So those are the only two meanings of sex. It's either male, female, or sexual intercourse. And we shall look at each one of those as we go along. Now, there is the dilemma then of the egg and the chicken. And those who have been to these seminars by now, you should have this ingrained in your mind. Eh? So between the egg and the chicken, those who have never heard this story before, which came first? The chicken came first. So from which egg did it hatch?
Some scientists they always call the fulfillment. He says that in the egg there's some protein that can only be found in the chicken.
Yes, so true. But then if the chicken came first, from which egg did it hatch? And no, we are discussing science. So, huh? if the egg came first, then who laid the egg? Now this is another story that is used by scientists to tell us that it is not possible to know when life began. Okay? Between the egg and the chicken, we can't tell which came first, and for that reason, we have to use theories. So the Big Bang theory
life came from a pool of mud that became a single cell,
then became
a complex
animal.
We can all theorize because it's not possible to know when life began. But the truth is that they have lied to us for many years because the male is missing. Okay? So the life cycle, we have always been taught, does not have a male. It always starts with an adult female that lays an egg that becomes something. And if you want to pass your biology lesson, you must draw it this way. But the truth is that the male has been removed from the life cycle, which makes it false. So this is the 6. This is the 9. Somebody lied to us. Okay? So the male and female must have been present at the same time at the beginning of the life cycle of the chicken as full-grown adults so that they could mate so that the first egg is fertilized. If this egg is not fertilized, it will never give us a chick. So it means before the first egg that gave us the first chick, there must have been a male and female that were fully grown and ready to mate at the beginning. And if that is true, then between the Big Bang theory and coming from mud and the pool of mud and the theory of creation, which one makes more sense? That there must have been one who exists, who is, who will ever be, that created the first male and first female, that then started the life cycle of every animal that exists on Earth. Okay? So again, we have found the truth. Now, why would you remove the man from this? There are only 2 benefits. One is that you can argue there is no God. Okay? And the second one is that reproduction becomes a female affair. The man is no longer discussed when we discuss reproduction. That is not consistent with human nature. So some reflection questions. Where did you come from? Even that is giving you a headache. You were born. Yes, so somebody had sex, got pregnant, you were born. Yes, so you come from your father and your mother. And where did they come from? From their father and mother, isn't it? So if we follow it through, naturally, then there must have been a man and a woman who were not born by anyone. Makes sense? So, came from your father and your mother, and where did they come from? In my community, we say they came from Gikuyu and Mombi. Those were the first parents of the Kikuyu people. Yes? Now, when I met Luos and Kalenjins, where did they come from? They are not children of Gikuyu and Mombi, isn't it? Then they tell me they also have a story of creation of their community, isn't it? So all these communities must have had an ancestor that was common at one point or another. And we go to the same thing, that they must have come from the Almighty God of all creation, isn't it? So the theory is the same. Now, what other reflection we need to have is what color were the first human beings? What was the skin color of the first human being? None of us was there, so we can only theorize. So what was the color of the first human being? Is it possible to determine scientifically? It is possible. So the first human beings were the same color as me. You don't believe me. So if you take human beings in a population and you take the lightest of them and you breed them, you inbreed them, you make sure they're only breeding with the lightest in the community, you can actually create a Caucasian. Right? If you breed the darkest amongst them, you can create the Sudanese. All right? True? Yes. But you cannot take Caucasians and breed them to get a dark-skinned person. Are we together? So the first human beings were brown, and if you find any country that doesn't have brown people and everybody is light-skinned, that country has had a systematic discrimination of the dark-skinned person for centuries. They prevented the dark-skinned person from multiplying among them actively. So even as we have friends who come from Europe and other places, always remember that if you allowed the human species to reproduce without interference, you would never have Caucasians as an outcome. You would have light-skinned people, very few of them, very few dark-skinned people, everybody else would be brown. Now, what was the first relationship that was ever created? We have already found God, you remember? Yes. Now, one of the most interesting things about science is this. The scientist studies nature. So the scientist is first a creature who cannot explain where he came from. Then he studies nature, which is creation. And then he concludes there is no God. Can you get more stupid than that? So anyway, so there is a God. What was the first ever human relationship? What do you think? So God created male and female, then what? What was the first relationship that was ever created? Were they brothers and sisters? What relationship was the first one? Is marriage. Okay? So again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. The first relationship between a man and a woman that was ever ordained was marriage, isn't it? Now, for those of us who are Christians like me, then it is a sacrament that you enter into. It is a choice you make. It is not an accident. And the man and the woman must leave their father and mother and become joined to become one flesh, isn't it? Now, do you know how marriage is consummated? How do you complete marriage after church? How do you complete marriage? In any tradition, whether traditional, Muslim, Hindu, once you have committed yourselves in front of the public and in front of God, how do you complete marriage? Before children. The first sexual intercourse is what completes marriage. That's what is called consummation. So if you get married and you take your vows and you find that you cannot have sexual intercourse, you do not seek a divorce. You seek an annulment. There was no marriage. You go and you find the man is impotent, he cannot get an erection. Then he entered this relationship by false pretense because he cannot perform what is required to consummate the marriage. It is a very, very important point, and you'll see why as we go along. So the family is the primary unit of society, is also the primary unit of government. And when the man and woman come together in that relationship called marriage, for us as Christians, it is through the church, and Christ becomes the head of their home. But when they come together in marriage, the man takes on a new office that is called husband. And the husband is an office that has responsibilities and rights. Okay? The woman takes on a new office that is called wife, and it has responsibilities and rights. Now, if they're blessed with children, whether the children are adopted or they get them themselves, then a boy child is referred to as a son. and a girl child is referred to as a daughter. These are offices. You must carry yourself in a manner that is respectful, so that we know you're the son of so-and-so, you're the daughter of so-and-so. And the parents get new offices when the children come. The husband becomes a father, the man becomes a father, the woman becomes a mother. And they have a responsibility that is called parenting to their children. It is this unit that then we call the family. And it is the same in the Christian community, the Muslim community, in the Hindu community, and it is also the same even among our traditional cultures. Okay? It is those many homes that then form the society and the community. So the society is not made up of individuals. The society is made up of families, and each one of us comes from a family. And even if we were orphans, what the truth is that we do not know our family of origin, but we have parents, isn't it? We couldn't have popped into the world, isn't it? So we may not know our biological parents, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a father or a mother. Okay? So now sexuality is then maleness or femaleness. That is what sexuality is. And it is derived from your biology. So a man can become a husband, can become a father. Now, it is not my biology that makes me male. It is very important we understand this. I am not male because I have a penis and testes. Okay? I am male, and therefore I have a penis and a testes. Sijui kama tuko pamoja. It is not my biology that makes me male. It is, you study me as a man and you discover I have a penis and a testes. Yes? That's not what made me a man. So even if you cut them off, I do not stop being a man. Are we together? Yes. So it is my maleness that comes first. Then you study me and you find what organs I have and what organs I don't have. So our sexuality is then defined by our sex. Only men can become a son, only men can become husbands, only men can become fathers. And it is the same with women. Only a woman can become a daughter, only a woman can become a wife, only a woman can become a mother. Now, it may sound obvious, but you discover that the world has given us a 9 in very many areas of our sexuality, okay? And it's important that we go through that. So in the community where you live, do you reflect your sexuality with the dignity that it deserves? So I said I am a child of God. When I am in the community, do I carry myself with the dignity of a child of God? Do I carry myself with the dignity of a creature of God that is created out of love? I have a father and a mother. When I am in the community, do I reflect myself the way I was brought up as a son of my father and a son of my mother? Do I carry myself with the dignity that is deserved of my sexuality? If I am a father, I'm a husband, if you met me somewhere and you didn't know me, would you know I'm a father and a husband depending on how I behave? Do I carry my office with the dignity that it deserves? If you're a wife or a mother, can we say the same about you? So, do you respect the sexuality of others? When you meet a woman, you meet a man, do you understand that this is the daughter of so-and-so? This is the son of so-and-so? Do you understand that this could be the husband of so-and-so or the wife of so-and-so? Do you understand they could be the mother of so-and-so and the mother of... Do you respect the dignity of the sexuality of others? Or do you see individuals who you can exploit? Are we together? Now, a little reflection again. Can a man become a woman through surgery and chemical treatment? can a man become a woman through surgery or chemical treatment? So if I went to theater and I cut off my bottoms here, and I put in stuff and I got a chest that looks like female, and I was injected with female hormones and I grew long hair, have I become a woman? What have I become? I have become a severely mutilated man who is now castrated. Are we together? Are we together? Have I said anything that is strange? Now, so a man cannot become a woman through surgery or chemical treatment. Can we do the same for the woman? No, we can't do the same for the woman. Can a man become a wife? Can a man become a wife? We've seen these things. Why are you behaving like you've not seen them? Can a man become a wife? We have seen men introduce other men as my wife, isn't it? Yes? But can a man become a wife? You see, it is not possible because the sex is different. Eh? Can a woman become a husband? Same story. Can people of the same sex get married? Can people of the same sex get married? So there are countries where people of the same sex can actually go and enter into an agreement, isn't it? A legal agreement. Yes? And they live together. Is that a marriage? Why? What is the single most important reason why people of the same sex cannot get married? Consummation, yes. They cannot consummate marriage. People of the same sex cannot have sexual intercourse. So if somebody tells you about same-sex marriage, you laugh at them like you've seen a witch. And you quickly tell them it is not possible. They cannot have sex, they cannot consummate a marriage. So call it something else, yes? Call it same-sex union, same-sex, whatever you want to call it, but don't abuse our intelligence by calling it same-sex marriage. All right? They cannot consummate marriage because they cannot have sexual intercourse. It is impossible to have same-sex marriage. Are we together? Okay, so parenting is an automatic responsibility that is given by God, and the parents are supposed to receive the new soul and ensure that that new soul will be reunited with the Creator at the point of death. So it's a huge responsibility. You have asked for a child, you've been given a child, God has created a new soul. All new souls are created on earth, then they go to heaven. The question is, you as parents, you have a responsibility to make sure that that new soul will be reunited with the Father. And men have the greatest responsibility when it comes to the spiritual well-being of the family, okay? It is very important and it is scientifically determined. Children who grow up fatherless have major challenges. 90% of those who are homeless or who run away are fatherless. 85% of the children with behavioral disorders, including same-sex attraction and others, are fatherless. 85% of the youth in prison are fatherless. 75% of children who abuse drugs. 80% of rapists. 71% of school dropouts, 60% of teen suicide, and convicted serial killers. The lack of a father or father figure in the life of the child is very damaging. And that's why we are saying fathers have the greatest responsibility in the spiritual well-being of their children. It is something that is not taught in our sexuality, yet it is an important part of our sexuality. Okay? So, what is the value of sex and sexuality? Why is it important for us to understand our sex and sexuality? from an authentic point of view. Why do you think sex and sexuality is important? To understand what, and our bodies, okay, yes, to understand our bodies. Anything else? Well, the most important thing is that it allows us to identify a mate. So if all of us looked the same and you couldn't tell who is male or female, how would we ever find a mate? It is important. So between a cow and a bull, the cow should be able to know who is the bull and who is the cow, isn't it? So that they seek the right mate. It's the same for us also, isn't it? If we all dress the same, look the same, then it would be impossible for us to find a mate. Okay? What is the value of sexual attraction? So now we have identified a mate. What is the value of sexual attraction? Anybody? What is the value of sexual attraction? So now we can identify a mate. If we are not attracted to one another, God has to create new human beings every time, isn't it? So the value of sexual attraction is that we are driven towards seeking that mate, isn't it? So it's not just enough to see a woman. You must see she's beautiful and get attracted, isn't it? Then you can start a new family. Otherwise, if there was no sexual attraction, it's not even important to know who is male or female. So sexual attraction and being able to identify a different sex is very important in human sexuality. So you'll find in most civilized communities, and here I use civilized from a point of view of our moral makeup. In most civilized communities, you will find that chastity or respecting that sexual intercourse is for the marriage is a very important part of sexuality. Okay? So we want you as youth to grow up and have a lot of sex so we can become grandparents. And all we are asking is that you're careful about the timing. We're not asking you not to have sex. Does that make sense? So we want you to grow up and have a lot of sex so we can become grandparents, but you have to be careful about the timing. So if you are not married, meaning you're in a committed relationship with a spouse and you're ready to become a parent, then you have a moral responsibility to avoid sexual intercourse. It is not our business to come and check if you're having sex. It is your personal responsibility, and your choices will have consequences. Now, the only thing I'd like to emphasize about our sexuality in teenagehood is that the teenager is a very vulnerable stage of our development. Did you know the brain was the last organ to mature in the human body? So as the brain matures, we get some new activity in our bodies. So the brain has matured up to a certain point, we are able to sit, 6 months. It matures up to a certain point, we are able to walk 1 year. By the time we are 2 to 3 years, we can speak, has matured. By the time we are 14, the sexual part of the brain is fully mature. And a 14-year-old can make a 30-year-old woman pregnant. Okay? So he's fully sexually mature. The youngest we have in this country was a little girl who was 10 years old who had been sexually molested, who was pregnant. So you're saying the teenager is fully sexually mature and can become a parent. But the part of the brain which is called the frontal lobe, which is the one that helps us with reasoning, does not mature until we are 21 to 24 years of age. And that is the challenge of teenagehood, okay? Because we are saying that sexual maturity occurs almost 10 years before social maturity. So when we talk about the law saying before the age of 18 you cannot drink alcohol, before the age of this you cannot do that, is because that child has no capacity to make good choices. The reason why this is very important to understand in human sexuality is because you cannot train a teenager to make decisions about sex. You cannot teach a teenager how to choose contraceptives. You cannot teach a teenager how to negotiate for sex. You cannot teach a teenager what is safe sex, what is not safe sex. It is abusing a child. It is another 9 in our life of sexuality. You understand? You cannot teach a teenager how to make choices about sex because they have no capacity to make those choices. So this is a good picture that demonstrates how we behave when we are teenagers trying to make decisions about sex. It is titled, Remember That Time You Forgot to Think? This guy is trying to start a power saw and he's holding it between his legs. If that thing goes on, he's castrated. Are we together? This is what it looks like when teenagers make choices about sexual intercourse. They do not have the mental capacity to make those choices. Now, we go to sexual intercourse, your favorite subject. So the biology of sexual intercourse will also reflect a bit on brokenness. So between the padlock and the key, who is male and who is female? The padlock is female, and the male is key. So when we look at objects, we reflect our biology on them and give them names, isn't it? So between the door and the door frame, which is male and female? Between the door and the door frame, which is male and female? The door is male. The frame is female. What about a socket and a plug? The socket is female, the plug is male. Yes, so again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand compatibility, isn't it? So the male organ and the female organ are designed for compatibility, all right? They're designed to be compatible. So when you have the male genitals, what are the work of the male genitals other than to susu? Is to deliver the male life-giving seed or sperm into the woman. In terms of sexuality, the function of the male organ is to deliver the male seed into the woman. And it must be erect, so impotence means that you can't do that, okay? Now, the male then becomes the giver, isn't it? Now, the female organ is designed to receive the male seed, to facilitate fertilization, implantation, growth, birth of the baby, and the breasts are very important for nursing the baby, all right? That is how the female system is designed. So the female system, the woman is a receiver. She receives, okay? Now, unfortunately, we also have to confront some untruths, that the mouth and the anus are part of the digestive system. They are not part of the sexual system. And you are laughing, but some people are truly confused. I am telling you as a doctor that the anus and the mouth are part of the digestive system. They are not sexual organs. So if one uses the anus of another man for sexual pleasure, he is masturbating. He is using the anus of another man to masturbate. He is not having sexual intercourse. Are we together? It is not even sex. Don't play games with our minds, isn't it? It is not sex because sex means sexual intercourse. It's male, female. So you cannot even say anal sex because you're cheating us. That is another 9. Yes? Somebody is using another's anus to masturbate. And somebody is using another's mouth to masturbate, to experience sexual pleasure, but without using the correct organs. So we must differentiate sexual intercourse from masturbation and not be confused about it. Are we together? Now, the main difference between masturbation and sexual intercourse is that masturbation is close to life. You cannot bear children, okay? So when you have people of the same sex who then go into a legal union, who then want to adopt a child, it is not difficult to answer their question. They do not qualify because they have chosen to go into a sterile union. If they were with opposite sex, both of them would have gotten a child. The fact that they have chosen a union that is sterile means they made a choice knowingly, and they do not deserve to adopt a child. All right? If they wanted to have a child, then they go into marriage or look for a mate who is of the opposite sex and get children, but they should not abuse our intelligence by telling us they are now infertile. They are not infertile. They are in a sterile union by nature. Okay? So the sexual act was also designed for performing, not watching. Tell your friend it's for performing, not watching. Okay? So it is absurd to watch sex. Pornography is absurdity. You watch people having sex, then you are sexually aroused, then you become a pervert because you have to rape someone or go to masturbate, isn't it? So why were you watching in the first place? So sexual intercourse was designed for performing, not watching. So you create your own little movie in private with your spouse, and you don't record it. Yes? Now, because sexuality has been taught as reproductive health, God has been removed from the teaching of sexuality, then we have a problem that has been forgotten, and that is that sexual intercourse is actually a spiritual sacrificial prayer. It is a spiritual sacrificial prayer, and the man is the high priest, and the prayer that he is making is calling on God to make him and the woman he has chosen to become parents. That is the prayer that the man is making. And the sacrifice that the man gives is his life-giving seed or semen, and the holy altar on which God would then create the new child is the womb of the woman who has been chosen by this man as his mate. And it is very important we understand this, because by working with the man and the woman, God creates a new soul. And it is very, very important we keep that in mind. And the example I give is that of a maize farmer who goes and finds a fertile piece of land. It is during the rainy season. He has some maize seeds in his hands, and he scatters them in the land, then goes away and comes back after a month, and he finds maize growing. And he is shocked and surprised. Who told you to grow maize? What is wrong with you? That is how men who say they're surprised that their girlfriend got pregnant, that is how stupid they sound. Yes? You go and you give seed to a fertile piece of land, and a baby grows, and you come and you say, you're shocked, I'm surprised. What happened? That was not the plan. You're not organized. The man is the high priest. He's the one who chooses the woman. He takes the greater responsibility when it comes to bearing children. The world has cheated us that it is the woman who bears the responsibility of pregnancy. Remember that a woman who gets pregnant has done exactly what God designed her to do. You cannot blame her for getting pregnant. She has actually done exactly what she was designed to do, to give us new life. Okay? Now, ovulation, conception, implantation, because we are going into contraceptives, is just quick to understand. The egg, when it is released, must be fertilized, and when it is fertilized, it ceases to be an egg. So when the sperm comes together with the egg, remember the sperm is alive alone, isn't it? And the egg is also alive, true? Once they come together, there is no more sperm, there is no more egg. A new human life has begun. Okay? It may be small, it may be microscopic, and scientifically we call it a zygote. the first cell of a human being. And as it grows, we call it a morula. Then we call it a blastocyst. Then it implants, and then we call it a fetus. Yes? So life begins at conception, and it takes about 7 days before the baby implants in the mother, and then starts growing in the mother, and 9 months later they are born. Okay? So, let's reflect on a few things. What is the definition of a child? Do you have any lawyers in the house? What is the definition of a child legally? Eh?
Very subjective, depending on jurisdiction. Some say from 18 and say 17 and below,
Mm.
that is legally a child.
Mhm.
But then from 18 and above,
Is that another, yeah, so that's it. A person below the age of 18, yes, is a child. In most jurisdictions, a child is below the age of 18. True? Okay. So when a sperm and the egg come together, then what do you form? You form a zygote, a morula, a blastocyst, a fetus. All these are just different stages of human development, isn't it? Like you can call a child, adolescent, young adult, old man. They're just stages of development, but they're within the mother's womb. But I can promise you that a zygote, a human zygote, cannot become a rat. True? You will not be born a frog. So long as the sperm and the egg are from a human being, the baby will be born a human, isn't it? So does it change its humanity when you call it a zygote or a fetus? Okay. So our humanity is not defined by our stage of development. Okay? So we say no to that one. Legally, is a person below the age of 18? So yes, the person is below the age of 18. What would you call a person from conception until birth? Hmm? You'd call it an unborn person, isn't it? Or an unborn child. Makes sense? So when you say you don't know what an unborn child is, then you're playing around with our head, isn't it? So an unborn child, an unborn person is a human being from conception until birth. Okay? Now, according to the Christian understanding, is that we are known to God before we are formed in our mother's womb. So God looks at Kenya and says, in the next 30 years, I need a person with this caliber to take care of this kind of job, isn't it? And then your parents are having sex, and they are praying for a child, and God decides this couple is the one that is going to look after this child, right? So when we conceive a child, we don't say my child. You see, we like saying that a lot. My child. I'm the one who's supposed to be my child. But the thing is that is a gift from God and was known by God before it was formed in its mother's womb. And you are here for a purpose. You couldn't have been born to have sex, take alcohol, and die. It is not possible that that's the reason you came to this world. Each one of you has been given talents. Each one of you is given opportunities every day to serve humanity and do something that only you can do. And when we destroy life, we do not know who it is we have destroyed or what part of life they were supposed to come and help us. Now, if you understand your biology, is sex assigned or observed at birth? So is it the doctor who says you're a boy or a girl? Is he the one who assigns your sex? Can a child be born male and I say, no, this one is a girl? Yes? Or a child is born a boy and I decide as a doctor, I've decided this one is female. Yes? So as doctors, we don't assign sex. We actually look between the legs and we say this one is a boy, write it down. It's a scientific observation. It's a simple scientific observation. This is a boy, this is a girl. So sex is not assigned. You will find that this is again another area for a 9 or a 6, okay? Now we go to, maybe we stop there before we go to birth spacing. Are there any burning questions? Yes?
Thank you, Doctor. I just have a simple question.
Mm.
And it is looking back at where I come from, Uganda. I live in a community that is kind of superstitious. You mentioned a thing about a male zygote that is human cannot become what? Cannot become what? And I've heard of stories where they say that woman gave birth to like Victoria, that woman gave birth to a leopard. How do we defend that in case we are talking to people who don't decide? Thank you.
Well, the thing is that we are also looking at the truth. This whole thing is about seeking the truth, isn't it? So we have myths, we have stories, there are things that we have been told in childhood. I remember one of the things we were not allowed to do as children is to whistle at night. And we were told if you whistle at night, you are calling snakes or the devil. And we were terrified, and we would never whistle at night. But as you grow older, you discover that that is how teenagers were calling the girls out at night. So you go to the girl's hut and then she comes out. And for the elders to deal with that, they came up with a story that whistling at night calls snakes. So it has its purpose in terms of restricting certain things until you're old enough to understand. So those stories, you need to understand where they come from and what they were supposed to teach so that it is possible for you to understand the context. But it is obviously not scientific. Any other question? Yes.
In your earlier teaching, in your earlier presentation, you said that we agreed that we consummate our marriage through the first sexual intercourse after the wedding has happened. And I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
So, like, you see now young people have this thing of we need to test drive, we need to see if it's functioning. But then, in the other side, they're saying that the first intercourse is what we use to consummate the marriage. So, like the way we go to facilities and get tested if we are positive in terms of HIV and AIDS, is there a way that people can go get medical attention to know if they are functioning, if their organs are functioning, if they are impotent, and so forth?
So can you do tests for fertility?
Yeah, for both male and female.
For both male and female. Now, you must separate fertility from sterility, okay? And we must then distinguish impotence from fertility. So men are the ones who are impotent. And an impotent man would not be able to get an erection. And unless it is something that has happened in later age, then you would know you are impotent from the time you were a boy. Because everybody else will be talking about an erection and you don't know what they're describing. So an impotent man cannot get married until as he just discovered he's impotent, because impotence is about erection. Okay? Now fertility is about whether he has sperm and whether the woman has eggs, whether her tubes are open. You're not supposed to test fertility because the coming of children is not something that you do like buying a car. There is no guarantee that you would ever have a child in your life, even if you're completely normal, because it is a two-people thing. Even when we define infertility in medicine, we define it as a couple that is unable to conceive a child after 1 year of regular sexual intercourse, okay? We don't define infertility as a person. You can't say this man is infertile, this woman is infertile. It's a couple. So you cannot test fertility unless the couple has come together and tried to have sex, and then you discover they're not conceiving. The reason we test is to find out how we can help them to achieve a pregnancy. Okay? Now, when it comes to sterility, if a woman has never had her periods her whole life, then before she seeks to get married, she needs to find out what is happening, because sometimes the uterus is missing. Okay? And if the uterus is missing, then it would be wrong to enter into marriage, because you cannot have a child and you know it. Okay? But if she has periods, she's been having periods, then it doesn't matter. So we are not supposed to test fertility until you have consummated your relationship and you have failed, because we can find you're completely normal and the fellow you get married to is completely normal and you still don't achieve a pregnancy. Okay? Now, those things of test driving are a lie from the devil, but we'll talk about them. Remember, if I have sex with Jane today, because I'm trying to see whether it will work, and then tomorrow I have sex with Judy, each of those experiences is new. I cannot take what I have learned from Jane to go and do it to Judy. She might not like what I do. So every experience is new. So even if you've had sex with 20 people and you get married, then you're beginning a new relationship. Okay? So even if one was not a virgin at the point of getting married, the consummation is about that couple. It's not about the other relationships that one has. Yeah? It's about giving yourself to this person for life. Ideally, it should be when we are virgins, but then we cannot say it won't happen because somebody has made a mistake in their life. We are not our mistakes. We have redemption. Okay? So let's go to birth spacing. Some important biological understanding. This is the uterus, ovary. The cervix is the mouth of the uterus. You all know what the vagina is. The tubes that carry the egg are called the fallopian tubes. So some important biological facts. Number one is that the vagina is usually acidic in its natural state. Okay? Now, the vagina is open to the outside right next to the anus. And when people have sex, they don't sanitize first. Or you don't know? Okay, I'm telling you. So the idea is that the bacteria around the anus would get into the vagina. Yet the uterus, where the baby sits inside here, is completely sterile and must not have bacteria. And if any bacteria goes in there, the woman would get so sick, would need to admit her to treat her. How come women don't get sick? Is because the acid will not allow the wrong type of bacteria to grow in the birth passage. Okay? So it is protective to the woman. Now the egg, this acid unfortunately kills sperm in 10 minutes. 200 million sperms, not even one is alive in 10 minutes. Now, the egg is only alive for 1 day. The day it is released in ovulation, if it is not fertilized that same day, it dies. That's the end of that month. You can't get pregnant. Just 1 day. Now, assuming we are God, and we create a woman with acid to protect her, but it kills the sperm, and then we give her one egg, an egg that is alive for only 1 day, how would she ever get pregnant? There is a problem, isn't it? If the sperm is dead, it can't fertilize the egg. There is a problem. Yes? So what God did is that in the middle of the month, the woman produces some mucus that comes from inside the uterus. It flows through the vagina until it comes to the outside, and she can actually feel a new wetness that is not her periods. Okay? Very, very slippery mucus eventually becomes clear and stretchy, just like egg white. That mucus is alkaline, which is the opposite of the acid, and its first business is to destroy all the acid so that the sperm does not die. Nani kama Mungu? Interesting, isn't it? That mucus also keeps the sperm alive inside the lady's cervix, in little pockets on the cervix, for 3 to 5 days, waiting for that egg to be released. And the minute that egg is released, all that mucus aligns like a superhighway. In 5 minutes, the sperms are where the egg is. It's a little miracle that happens in the woman. But it is amazing. So the sperms are alive for 3 to 5 days. They are kept here in the cervix. They entertained, they watch DSTV, they exercise. The bad ones are thrown out into the vagina. Only the good ones are retained until the egg is released. Now that mucus in the woman would be there for 1, 2, or 3 days. So 1 day of mucus means the woman feels wet now. By evening, she's very slippery and it's very stretchy. In the next day, in the morning, she wakes up, she's still wet. By lunchtime, the next day, it disappears. So that's 1 day of mucus, all right? Now, that mucus would then last for about that 1, 2, or 3 days. Then the woman would feel completely dry. You just wake up one morning and the wetness is gone, okay? Now, there is still a lot of mucus remaining in the vagina, even though it is not flowing out because it is not being produced. But there is still a lot of mucus in the vagina, and that mucus will last for another 3 days before the acid comes back, okay? So if you want to know how long a woman is fertile, you take the number of days she has experienced a mucus, you add the 3 days before the mucus comes, the acid comes back, and what you find is that the woman is on average fertile for only 4 to 6 days in a whole month. Did you know that? So, if a woman has a 28-day cycle and has bleeding for 4 days, and she's fertile for 6 days, you take the 4 days of periods and the 6 days of fertility. If the baby is too small, then you're saying you have 10 days within which you will not have sex, isn't it? So that you don't get pregnant. True? If you take 10 days and you subtract from 28 days, how many days do you have? You have 18 days. So God gave us 6 days for making babies and 18 days for having sex for pleasure, and people are still complaining. So, if the woman was trained to know herself, to be able to identify these 4 to 6 days, then we have empowered her to make a decision as to when to get a baby and when not to have a baby without having to use any contraceptives. Now that is true female empowerment. Teaching a woman to use contraceptives is teaching her to become a sex object, and I'll explain that. Okay? So we now have understood these basic things. What is the other thing we must teach the female? We must teach her the correct menstrual cycle. So women are being taught about periods, and then about periods and a dry period in between. Nobody is telling them about their mucus of fertility. That is not the correct menstrual cycle. So we'll go through the normal menstrual cycle. A woman has days of bleeding. After that, she is dry, and we are waiting for the mucus to come, so we say we are waiting for fertility. And then she experiences the wetness of the mucus we have described, and she has another 3 dry days when we know she still has the mucus inside of her. And then we go into another period of dryness where we know fertility is now over, and then she gets her periods again. So the menstrual cycle that is being taught to the girl child now is missing this center part, which is extremely, extremely important, okay? Now, during the time, as we are training the girl child about her menses, we explain to her that it is important for her to know how her body changes before her periods. Yes? So if you don't want to stain yourself with your periods, it is very important that you know how your body feels before they come. Yes? So you wake up in the morning, and the way your breasts are feeling, your tummy and stuff, you carry your pads. We ask you, why are you carrying them? You say, my periods are coming. We ask you, how do you know? And you get annoyed. Because you just know. It is your body. I know how I feel, isn't it? You don't have to write it down. And it may be different for every woman, isn't it? In the same way, when a woman is fertile, her body also talks to her. And it is important for the woman to be trained to pay attention to her body. Because this is one time you wake up in the morning and you have this beautiful skin complexion. No pimples, nothing. Women talk about a glowing face. You just look nice. You are in very high spirits. You feel very nice. You have this energy. You even walk quicker than usual. You're very keen about how you look and you want something nice and warm and sexy, and your friend greets you, you hug them. And you actually feel a little horny. You find men very attractive, you know. So the way the woman was created by God is at the time when she is fertile, she's actually most attractive and she's most likely to say yes to intercourse. All right? So we need the girl child to understand that she's extremely vulnerable during the time of her fertility. So that when we say don't go to his house, don't invite him to your house, don't be alone with him, don't accept physical touch, is not because we don't trust the woman, it's because she is vulnerable. And if you are dating, if you have this person you are having coffee with thinking about the future, and you had agreed to go and have coffee with him, and you wake up and you find you're fertile, you call him and tell him something has come up, let me see you next week. You stay away from him until you know how to manage yourself. Are we together? Now, most of the women who I meet who are pregnant for the first time, they even had the first sexual intercourse, and you ask them, did you understand your biology? What do you mean you are surprised? In fact, the first thing they tell you is that I don't know what happened. Okay? And it is true. Because they went to that home to just make chapati and show the man they know how to cook. They were fertile, they didn't know. The fellow touched them, played some music. The next thing they know, it is morning, and you know, things have happened. And you ask them what happened, I don't know. So it is not a joke, it is true. Because we do not empower the girl child to understand that she is fertile at that point and she is vulnerable, okay? So we encourage the women from the time the menses are coming to an end to be very careful to examine themselves. If they experience any wetness, just touch that wetness between the lips of the vagina and feel it and find out whether it is the slippery, stretchy mucus or whether it is the sticky discharge that is usually not fertile. You must know where you are. Pay attention to how your body is feeling at that time. If you can get to a point where you wake up in the morning and you look at that mirror and you say, my fertility is going to come, and that morning or the next day it comes, you have just become an expert of your fertility. And that is the most powerful knowledge a woman can have, okay? So, we also ask you to pay attention to that point of change from dryness to the wetness. The first time you feel that, because it's important. We also ask you to pay attention to the day the mucus ends, because again it is important. And therefore when we teach the girl child to chart her cycle, these are the points that are important. When did the period start? When did the bleeding stop? Then when did you experience the point of change? When did you experience that wetness that told you the mucus is coming? And how long did that mucus last? Then you add 3 dry days without the mucus, 3 dry days, and you also mark that in your calendar, and then you mark again when the period starts. That is how the cycle is supposed to be charted. Now, some of you have apps, okay, that you use to track your cycles. Now, if you have an app that you say periods have started and it tells you how long they will last, it tells you when you're going to be fertile and when the next period is going to come, that app is predicting your cycle and is therefore based on witchcraft. You need to go and delete it and throw it away. Never look at it again. It is a waste of time. All right? A good app will let you say, chart what you're feeling. I have periods today, periods tomorrow, periods this. I've noticed my mucus, I've noticed my mucus, I've noticed my periods have come again. It is you who tells the app what you're feeling. It must not predict for you. And I'll explain to you why that is dangerous. Okay? So this is first phase of the cycle, begins with the periods and ends at the beginning of the mucus. The second phase starts with the mucus and ends on the 3rd dry day after the end of the mucus. And the 3rd part of the cycle starts on the 4th dry day all the way up to the period. So a proper menstrual cycle has 3 phases, not 2. And it is very important that we teach the girl the right thing. Okay? It is also important to understand that from when the mucus starts to when the periods start is a very, very regular 12 to 14 days. So if you notice the mucus, you can actually tell when the periods are going to come. They will come in 12 to 14 days. Okay? But from the part from the period's beginning to the time the mucus of fertility will come changes. So you can never use your periods to know when you're going to be fertile. It is witchcraft. You can never use your periods to determine fertility. And I'll show you why it is important. Okay? So, you have heard about safe days. Now, as we talk about the fertile window, we do not talk about safe days. Now, safe days is training the woman to consider herself a sex object. Because if you are only good when you can have sex when you cannot give as a child, then you are not good for anything else other than sex. You basically are a sex object. That we have trained the woman to say that I am only good for providing sex. Yet, fertility is the greatest gift you are given by God that would give us new life. It is the most precious gift that a woman has, the capacity to give us good life, and a new life, and we teach you to hate it and consider yourself unsafe. So, as we are very careful, we respect the woman, and we talk about a fertile window. If anybody talks to you about safe days, you need to shut them up immediately and tell them I'm not a sex object. All right? I have fertile days. I don't have unsafe days. Yeah? It's very important. So you have heard about the calendar or the counting method where you can count and decide when to have sex so that you don't get pregnant? So it goes like this. A regular cycle, the commonest cycle among women is 28 days and very regular. So that's the commonest cycle. It's not the normal one. The cycle can have different lengths. But the commonest one is 28 days and regular. Now we have just learned that if your period starts today, you ovulated 14 days backwards, not forwards, isn't it? Isn't it? Because from ovulation to periods is 12 to 14 days. So if periods start today, then counting backwards 14 days is when you ovulated. And we know you are fertile for 3 days before because the mucus can keep the sperm alive. And we know you're fertile for another 3 days after the mucus is over. You remember? So even your app will give you a 6-day window that it will calculate and call that the fertile window if it respects you. Or it will call it safe days if it thinks of you as a sex object. Okay? Now when you're using the calendar to space children, you're told after your periods you can have sex until maybe day 9, then stop, wait for the fertile window to pass, then from day 19 to the periods you can continue having sex, isn't it? That's how it is taught. Huh? Now, if this month you're so stressed that your periods are going to come 1 week early, all right? You have been moved to a different place, a relative has died, something has happened. Stress can change the cycle, okay? If this month your periods are going to start a week earlier, but they have just started, do you know that that cycle is going to be short? Do you know? The periods have just started. Do you know the cycle is going to be short? You have no idea, isn't it? They have just started. You assume there will be 28 days like the usual, isn't it? Now, if we count 14 days backwards, we discover that that month you're going to ovulate on day 7. And your app says you can have sex, and you're going to get twins. But you followed your app very accurately, and you counted perfectly, isn't it? What if your cycle is going to be late by a whole week? The periods have just started, so you don't know. Yes? Yes? If we count 14 days backwards, we find that that month you'll ovulate on day 20. And according to the app, you should not get pregnant, but you will get pregnant. Okay. So the calendar or counting method is also based on witchcraft. It doesn't work. It is not a birth spacing method, and nobody should ever teach it to anyone. It is a total waste of time, okay? And it is because it is the last part of the cycle that is regular, not the first part. So this woman could be breastfeeding, and for 6 months she hasn't seen her periods. She's breastfeeding, she's been trained to wait for her periods to start counting. And because her periods are not come, she's having sex thinking she can't get pregnant. But fertility tends to come before the periods. And that's how the breastfeeding woman gets pregnant, as she's waiting for periods to start counting. Okay? So this should not be taught to anyone. It is actually a waste of time. That women ovulate on day 14 is a myth, based on the assumption that the cycle will be a regular 28 days. Okay? So can I teach you a few tricks? You may not be experts, but you can understand that there is a science behind natural family planning. Okay? So do we want to space or to get a child? So if you're trying to get a baby, if the woman has mucus and that fertile window, that's the time to have sex and get a baby. So we train couples this, so that if your husband lives in Mombasa and you're in Nairobi, and you get your mucus on Tuesday, and he's not going to come until Saturday, yes? You come to the clinic, we give you sick off. For 3 days, you go to Mombasa, isn't it? You have sex for 3 days, you come back pregnant, you know? So it's important to know that you can have sex that time. If you're very good with this, we can actually teach you how to increase the chances of getting a baby boy or increase the chances of getting a baby girl up to 90% success rate by just understanding the nature of our this. So we have learned it, you're infertile from the 4th dry day up to the end, and I like calling that period the rabbit zone. Okay, so if you're having sex and no children, then the rabbit zone is the time. Okay? But because you must be very clear about this mucus, it is important that you're first an expert of your fertility, that you know your mucus for at least 3 to 6 months, that you can identify this mucus before you can assume the infertile phase. Okay? Now, this other phase after the periods have ended before the mucus is also infertile, but it is very dicey and it's very easy to get pregnant unless you follow some basic rules. Okay? That period, the rules are called the early day rules, or in the period of waiting for fertility, or you have bled for whatever reason, even if it's not your periods. So long as you bleed, you come back here in the cycle. So there are 4 basic rules. Rule number 1, you must not have any sex or genital contact in the morning. All genital contact must be in the evening. So we talk about genital contact because part of the lubrication that would appear on the penis of a man in readiness for the sperm to come can have sperm. And if a woman is fertile, that is enough for her to get pregnant. Do you know women have gotten pregnant without having sex? Yeah? So you are fertile, you're in this fertile window, you are wearing your panty and you have refused to remove it because you don't want to have sex, but it is wet with that mucus of fertility. And you allow the young man to play around there and he ejaculates. That sperm will be taken all the way to the egg, and you will come and you tell us you never had sex, and we'll say yes, but you're still pregnant. So we say no genital contact. Don't allow that thing anywhere near you. No daily sex. Skip at least 1 or 2 nights if you have had sex the night before. Don't have any sex if you are bleeding. And if there is any unusual change in the mucus, then you must wait for at least 3 dry days before you make a decision about sex. Okay? Now, this is not witchcraft, it is science. Okay? So why no sex in the morning? the woman is using the day to determine whether she has experienced any wetness. So she's making her decision in the evening, isn't it? Now, if she didn't have sex in the evening and went to sleep, because she was tired and in the morning she feels she has a lot of energy, then what happens is that you notice she has been lying down for 6 to 8 hours. The vagina could be full of mucus and she has no idea, isn't it? So sex in the morning can catch you off guard. Eh? Now, you are so clever you decide to go and check whether you have mucus in the morning, isn't it? And you check and you're still dry. It is because the mucus is so thick, you have to be upright for at least 6 to 8 hours for you to experience the flu. So you will still get pregnant, okay? So no sex in the morning, okay? Now, no daily sex. So you had sex last night, the whole day you'll have this discharge after intercourse, has a bit of semen, a bit of the mucus of intercourse, and it will be there the whole day. Even by evening you still feel a little wetness. How would you know that the mucus has not come? Because of that confusion, it is best that you don't have sex the next night, so that you allow yourself another whole day to check if the dryness will have gone. If you wake up the day after and you're dry, then you know that the discharge you were experiencing yesterday was because of intercourse. If you find you're still wet, then the mucus of fertility came that day, and now you know how to make your choices. Why no sex while you're bleeding? We have just learned that the cycle can be very short. So the woman who has a 21-day cycle and has periods for 6 days, her fertility, mucus, and the periods will mix at the beginning or the end of the other, isn't it? So women who have a very short cycle and long periods sometimes don't get babies because they wait for this wetness to end, because they've always associated it with their periods. And they're always having sex when they can't get pregnant. So some of those women, we actually advise that they have sex just as the periods are ending, otherwise they'd never get pregnant. So you can ovulate very close to the beginning of your periods. That's why if you notice any bleeding, you must stop any sexual activity, okay? So this can be used by a woman who is having irregular cycles. It can be used by a woman who is breastfeeding and not getting periods. It can be used by a premenopausal woman. It can be used by a young woman whose periods are beginning at the age of 19, 18. All it requires is that the woman knows herself long before she has started any sexual encounter, isn't it? Now, if we were to teach this as the normal sexuality, there would be nobody who would use contraceptives. And that is why, even in medical school, we are not taught this. I was taught this just 5 years ago. I went through my first degree, went through the second degree, and all we were taught was the calendar method, and we were told it doesn't work. But we were not taught this. Why would medical school not teach doctors this knowledge? Is because the doctor is the only one who can prescribe contraceptives. It is the doctor who is in touch with the woman. So it's another form of female abuse, okay? So now, understanding this science, you have understood the science. Is it possible for pregnancy or a child to be unplanned, mistimed, or unwanted? If you have been listening to the science, is it possible for somebody to say that their pregnancy is unplanned? The question we'll ask you is, did you have sex? If you had sex, you can't tell us it was unplanned, isn't it? You had sex, you know biology means that you can get pregnant. Don't come and tell us, I'm shocked, I'm surprised. Yeah. Did you have sex? Yes, but I'm shocked. Mistimed. Can it be unwanted? Unfortunately, yes, it can be unwanted in cases of rape, right? So you can't talk about, if you had consensual sex, you cannot tell us it was unplanned, it was what. But in terms of rape, it can be unplanned. So this becomes a very heavy challenge in sexuality. So the question then is the child guilty of the father's offense? Is a child guilty of the father's offense? No. So should we condemn the child to death? Now, should we force the mother to raise the child? Should we force the mother to raise a child? She didn't want a child. She was raped. She went through a bad ordeal. Should we force her to take care of her child? That child is biologically hers, isn't it? Should we force her to keep that baby? The answer is no. Let us just be clear. We should not force her to keep the child. She must make that decision alone, isn't it? So then, how do we solve this problem without killing the baby and without forcing the child, the mother, to keep the child? So the society that allowed the woman to be abused must take responsibility and look after her through the pregnancy and childbirth. And after she delivers her baby, she must be allowed to make the choice whether to keep or to give up that child for adoption. All right? So it is not the best solution, but at least we did not kill the child and it did not force the mother to keep the child. Okay? So we have something called the Kyoto, the rescue homes that do exactly that. Okay? So they take women in crisis pregnancy, look after them, they go through counseling, and if they choose not to keep the baby, then they're allowed to give up the child for adoption. If they choose to keep the baby, then usually the families have been reconciled within that period of pregnancy, and most families actually receive their children back. Okay? We had one very unusual case of a lady who had come from Congo and was pregnant, running away from the chaos there. And as she came through the refugees camps, she was sexually assaulted and ended up pregnant, was brought to the rescue home, and said she doesn't want to keep that child. Went through counseling. But by the time she delivered the child, there is a period of 6 weeks that the woman is given to just confirm whether that's the choice she wants to make. And she decided to keep her baby. And we were quite surprised. So when she was asked why, she said that reflecting back in Congo when she was leaving the village, almost everybody there was slaughtered. She took off. So this is the only relative she is certain that is alive. Okay? And for that reason, she opted to keep her baby. Now, if she didn't want to keep the baby, then she wouldn't have been forced to keep the child. Okay? So, now we finished. We go to broken sexuality. We were talking about authentic sexuality. That is how sexuality should be taught in its fullness. God, male, female, husband, father, mother, wife.
Doctor?
Yes.
Hey.
Hey.
You stand up a little bit? You are dozing on me?
Oh dear. It is heavy. Any questions up to there? Yes.
As you explained, the woman understanding the whole process, I was wondering, what about those men who are not, maybe husbands, who are not cooperating? Maybe the woman would understand this is not the right time to have sex, and then there is the husband who may not understand.
This is supposed to be taught to the couple. That it's supposed to be taught to both boys and girls. They should know. The idea is it will not succeed if the man is not cooperative. Never ever. So if the man is an animal who thinks he will die if he doesn't have sex, you're in a lot of trouble. Sasa unataka nifanye nini? Yes, so sex, self-control is important for both parties. In fact, sometimes it is the man who should refuse. You know, the woman is being very generous, and you look at her and you say, hey, go and check. The way I'm seeing you, you might be fertile. Baby is still small. We wait a bit. Yeah? So sexual and reproductive health and rights is all about broken sexuality. If you are looking for a contrast between what is authentic and what is broken, then sexual and reproductive health and rights is the best example of broken sexuality. Okay? Now, for a long time, we did not know what sexual and reproductive health and rights stood for. Even by the time it was introduced into the SDGs in 2012, nobody could explain to you what sexual and reproductive health is. But after it was introduced into the SDGs, then WHO and UNICEF, UNDP, the World Bank came together and wrote this book that is called Sexual Health, Human Rights and the Law to explain what sexual health is. And in that book, they tell us that sexual health includes access to abortion, pleasurable and safe sexual experience for everyone, regardless of age, recognition of diversity and sexual behavior and expression, meaning homosexuality and transgenderism, the right for adolescents to sexual and reproductive health services without parental consent. So children below the age of 18 can access abortion, can access contraceptives, and they don't need to ask their parents. Legalizing of sex work or prostitution. Legalizing of same-sex marriages is part of sexual and reproductive health and rights. The governments are to provide access to cross-sex hormones and gender reassignment surgery. So if a 14-year-old boy says he thinks he's a girl, the government should help the boy to go through surgery to cut off his organs and get hormones so that he can look like a woman. Sexual and reproductive health services needs for adolescents include safe abortion. So the sexual and reproductive health that the adolescents should access without parental consent also includes safe abortion. And then the last one is comprehensive sexuality education is actually a crucial component of sexual health. So this, anytime you hear sexual health, this is what it means, okay? Now, comprehensive sexuality education, we are supposed to teach our children sexual reproductive health and rights, okay? So we teach them sexual intercourse is a human right that should be accessed by everyone. So if I want to have sex, I should have sex. Now, any person who is here listening to me, if you taught that the sexual act is a human right, what am I supposed to do if I want to have sex and nobody is willing? If sex is a right, is a human right, and I want sex and I want it now, and every woman I've spoken to has refused, what am I supposed to do to accomplish my right? You see, logically it doesn't make sense. But if you allow me homosexuality, you allow me to rape, you allow me pedophilia, you allow me to pay for it, then it will work, isn't it? Or I watch pornography and masturbate, yes? It just opens a can of worms, isn't it? We are supposed to teach the children to masturbate from the age of about 5, teach them how to experiment with sex. So if they're boys, they try sex with a boy, then try with a girl to decide what their orientation is. We are also supposed to allow them to choose their gender. So gender is different from sex. Sex is biological, gender is social. So I can be a man, a woman trapped in a man's body. Okay? It is important. So that's we are supposed to teach them that since sex, before we are ready to become parents, is for pleasure. We're only having sex for fun, isn't it? We are 14 and 16. We're not having sex to have children, isn't it? So it is important you also allow them to get contraceptives so that they don't get pregnant when they're having sex for fun, okay? Then if they get pregnant, of course, then you must provide them with safe abortion because that was not the plan. That is comprehensive sexuality education. So you contrast this to what we have just learned and ask yourself which we should be taught, okay? Then there is a question of unsafe abortion. Abortion is an English word that means bring to a premature end or bring to an end prematurely. So the word abortion is not a problem, it's just an English word, okay? But once you talk about induced abortion, in medicine it means you're deliberately bringing a pregnancy to an end before the baby can survive outside of the mother. Okay? The intention of induced abortion is to kill the child so that the mother goes from the clinic without a pregnancy. Are we together? That is what induced abortion is. And in medicine, it is taught as an unethical practice. It is bad manners. You don't do stuff like that. As a doctor, I'm trained to save lives, not to kill. Okay? So induced abortion basically kills an unborn child. Now, what is unsafe abortion? According to WHO, unsafe abortion is a procedure of terminating an unwanted or unintended pregnancy, carried out either by a person lacking the necessary skills or in an environment that does not conform to the minimum medical standards, or both. So an unsafe abortion is the killing of an unwanted child, but by a person who has not been trained in killing children and in an environment that is not clean or safe. That is unsafe abortion, okay? Now, safe abortion is where the baby is killed by a person who has been trained in the skills of killing a baby according to WHO standards and in an environment that is clean and safe. Are we together? So safe abortion is abortion carried out using methods recommended by WHO, appropriate for pregnancy, duration, and by someone with the necessary skills. The truth is that both of them, both safe and unsafe abortion, aim to deliberately kill the unborn child, right? Both of them are medically unethical, and both of them are illegal in Kenya, all right? Now, what about contraceptives? There are a lot of things called contraceptives that are not. So there is a contraceptive and an abortifacient. A contraceptive is a drug or device that prevents conception or fertilization. So if you prevent the sperm and the egg from coming together, that is a contraception, okay? So a condom is a good example of a contraceptive, all right? It retains the sperm, doesn't allow the sperm to get to the egg. Unfortunately, it is the only true contraceptive. An abortifacient is a drug or a device that will prevent the baby from implanting in the mother by either killing the baby or indirectly or directly. So either the device or drug kills the baby, or it prevents the baby from implanting and therefore the baby dies, okay? When you come to the coil or the intrauterine device, which is put inside the uterus, it works by causing inflammation that causes the area to be so hostile that the baby cannot be able to implant in the mother's womb. And the coil is 100% abortifacient. It doesn't stop ovulation, it doesn't stop fertilization or conception. It prevents the baby from implanting either by killing the baby or making the environment very hostile so that the baby cannot implant. It works 100% abortifacient. When you come to hormones, the commonest hormone, the hormone that is most important, is basically the progesterone part. So some hormones will have both progesterone and estrogen, but the progesterone, which is the pregnancy hormone, is the main ingredient. Estrogen is only put there to allow some bleeding at the end of the month so that the woman can recreate a cycle. But the most important one is the progesterone. Now, this gives a pregnancy-like state. It causes thickening of the mucus. It thins the inner lining of the uterus so that the baby doesn't implant. So 40% of the time it will prevent ovulation. So 40% of the time it is a contraceptive. But the other 60% of the time, the baby is actually formed. The fertilization occurs, but the uterus is too thin for the baby to implant. So 60% abortifacient, 40% contraceptive. Now, those of you who are in campus would know the morning after pill. It was intended to be used once or twice in a year in case of an emergency. Okay? So something has happened, you are not quite prepared, or that a condom broke or something. It was designed to be used once or twice in a year as an emergency contraceptive. Okay? Now, one tablet of Postinor 2 contains 750 micrograms of the progesterone hormone. Okay? Now, one contraceptive pill, the normal pill, like microdot or the combined pill, only contains 30 micrograms of the same hormone. So Postino 2, one tablet, 750. This one, 30. Okay? So by the time a woman takes 2 tablets of Postino 2, 1 tablet is equal to 25 contraceptive pills taken at the same time. By the time she takes a second pill, she's taken 50 contraceptive pills equivalent of progesterone in 24 hours. This is not told to our children. Postino 2, if you just take Postino 2 once a month, you're taking more contraceptives than a woman who's taking a pill every day. And our children are being taught to keep this in their pockets for the weekend. Okay? Now, it works 85% but efficient, because by the time you're getting, having sex, if you're fertile, ovulation, the fertility will still happen, is only 15% contraceptive. All right? Now, the contraceptive mentality is a mentality brought about by sexual and reproductive health and rights. Sexual intercourse, the seed is deposited inside the woman. Sexual intercourse is supposed to give us pleasure and also is open to life. A contraceptive purports to separate pleasure from pregnancy. Okay? So when you give somebody a contraceptive, what you're telling them, I have given you the power to separate pregnancy from pleasure so you can have sex for pleasure without getting pregnant. That's a contraceptive mentality, isn't it? Now, if that fails, because it is technically impossible to completely stop pregnancy, whatever contraceptive you use has a failure rate, but I have convinced you that I was protecting you from pregnancy like it is a disease, isn't it? So what should be done for you if you get pregnant and you had used a contraceptive? We must offer you abortion, isn't it? It's the only other choice. True? So contraceptives actually increase the demand for abortion. Now, if you're a businessman and you know this, what would be your business plan? Encourage children to have sex as much as possible, as early as possible. Offer them contraceptives knowing that they will not protect them 100%, isn't it? But it is their right. Yes? It's your right to have sex. Why not? So you give them that. So if you are a clever businessman, it is important that you invest in both industries, isn't it? So you can make money from the contraceptive and wait them for them on the other side, isn't it? So these clever businesses actually invest in supporting abortion and also producing contraceptives. Yeah? Yeah, Pfizer is there. Bayer, GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson. So these are among the 10 largest producers of contraceptives, and they actually support Planned Parenthood Federation, which is the largest abortion provider in the world. And it just makes business sense. Yes? And when they come to us with sexual and reproductive health, talking to our youth about their right to have sex, they tell us it is progressive. But at the back of their mind, they're just making money and smiling. So, mental health and sexuality. A person who sees or feels attracted to another of the same sex as a mate, as somebody you can actually have a sexual relation with, is out of touch with reality. And being out of touch with reality is called delusion. That is the medical term for being out of touch with reality. Okay? So if a person sees another of the same sex as somebody they can have a sexual relationship with, they basically have a medical condition called delusion. Now, delusion is a symptom of a very severe mental illness. Okay? So that when you see somebody who is delusional, you immediately understand they have a mental problem and you do not laugh about it. Yes? So if I come here and I tell you I'm the president of this country and I'm not happy that you're not standing when addressing me, you're not supposed to clap and cheer me, isn't it? You're supposed to call my wife and tell her I'm sick. So if I come here and I start telling you I'm actually a woman trapped in a man's body, you're not supposed to start smiling and clapping and saying that he has come out finally. You're supposed to feel sorry for me and understand there is something thoroughly wrong with me. If a person rejects their biological sex, then again they're out of touch with reality. And they have delusion, which is a symptom of a severe mental problem. Do we have such people among us? Yes. So one, it is not a Western thing being brought to us. Okay? These people have not chosen to feel the way they are feeling, and these people were not born that way. Something went wrong. And the biggest problem is that the largest percentage of them have experienced very severe childhood adverse events. Something went wrong in their childhood. They could have had emotional or physical or sexual abuse by their parents. They could be having a hostile or detached or absent father. An overprotecting or controlling mother is a problem. A feeling that they were not accepted by their peers. You go to play with the boys and they tell you, go away, you look like a woman. All those things can cause a lot of damage to children. Now, I have met a few of these children. One of them was 19 when I met him, and his father started sexually assaulting him when he was the age of about 6. And by the time he was 8, he had gotten used to it and was even soliciting for it because he had learned to like it. And because it is his father doing this, it can't be wrong. Okay? So you're talking about an 8-year-old child and the way they reason. By the time he was 13, the father decided this is wrong and it's not going to happen again, and he broke the relationship. Now, to the 13-year-old mind is that the person who loved me the most has just rejected me, isn't it? And he went down to Mombasa and became a male prostitute. Okay? Now, the sexual and reproductive health and rights people have apps. If you think you're homosexual, you go to this site and you can actually get a date and get to meet other people. And he was able to find people who would want to have an occasion every so often. And it was by the time now he was in my office, he had damaged his anal sphincter. He couldn't control stool, and he actually needed diapers. All right? Now, that is the kind of person that the sexual and reproductive health and rights people are telling you are normal, it is a good lifestyle, and will help you to maintain it. If that is not cruelty, you have to teach me something else. All right? Now, how should we treat people who are sick among us? Should we affirm their delusion, or should we encourage them to find healing so that they can get better? We should be telling them that what you're feeling, you may be experiencing it, you may be feeling it, it is true, and it is not your choice. Something must have happened to you, and if we can get some professional to walk with you backwards, we may be able to identify what went wrong, which would allow you to heal. That is how you take care of those who are sick among us. So the whole of the LGBTQ ideology has 3 types of people. The first type of people are our brothers and sisters who are unwell. They're either rejecting their biological sex or they're feeling attracted to people of the same sex. They are part of us and they are unwell. Okay, so that's the first group. Then there are those who take advantage of those with delusion, and they create avenues to exploit them. You even prepare special condoms for the men who have sex with men. You even prepare special lubricants so that they can have sex without having issues. You make sure you have HIV clinics for them because you know they are going to get HIV. Okay? They are taking advantage by keeping this lifestyle going because they are making money from it. And then there are those who we call the pawns. They are our brothers and sisters again who agree to work for these companies to earn a living and to perpetuate the illness. Okay? So those are the 3 groups. And if we are to deal with these groups, the idea is that we must help our own who are unwell to find healing. We must fight and resist sexual and reproductive health and rights so that it stops exploiting our children, and then these traitors must be called out. You are a scholar, you are a politician, you are the one who is pushing for lowering of the age of sexuality, of consent. You're the one who is pushing for children to be given contraceptives. You're the one who is writing scholarly papers to say that children are sexual from birth and that a child can love a man and love is love. You know, those are people we must condemn with all our strength, okay? So these consequences of sexual and reproductive health and rights, basically, they separate humanity from God by bringing in lies. They separate man and woman and the children and lead to fatherlessness. There is a big blow to masculinity by the radical feminists, where women are being told what a man can do, a woman can do better, so there is an attitude issue. A woman should not submit to a man. You know, there is a challenge about marriage. Instead of looking at wife and husband as offices, now we look at them as competition and who is controlling, who has power. And we have, when we are not guided by the truth and we are disconnected by the truth, the outcome is actually mental health. You remove man from God, you remove man from the truth, what you'll end up is mental health issues, okay? So now, since you were never taught this, let me end by teaching you the human life cycle, isn't it? In the beginning, there was God, and God created the whole of the universe before he created us. It is us who need the universe, it doesn't need us. Then he created man in his own image with everything that man needed and found him to be lonely. And he removed something from that man and created the most beautiful thing that man had ever seen. And from that point onwards, humanity has male and female. The man has everything he needs to be a man, but he only represents half of human nature. A woman has everything she needs to be a woman, but only represents half of human nature. You cannot understand the fullness of the human person unless you bring them together. According to our Christian understanding, they disobeyed God and they brought sin into the world, and Christ had to come to restore that relationship. So for me as a Christian, my life cycle starts with Christ, and the man and the woman should be in Christ. And then we were given the gift of marriage, and it is in marriage that we are supposed to bring our fruitfulness. The child is born, and it is separate from the mother. It was just a temporary occupant for 9 months. It's supposed to be brought up in a family with both a father and a mother, because we learn different things from mommy and different things from daddy, and we learn 80% of our relationships by watching how they treat one another. It is these many families that then form the community, and from the community that will get the next couple that will perpetuate the human life cycle. And because we are humans, we are going to die. In this community, there will be some souls who will never find their way back to the Father, and some souls that will find their way back to the Father, depending on how we make our choices. And as Christians, we have been sent to this community to make sure that we bring the good news of our salvation, so that as many people or all the people actually find their way back to the Father. Okay? So that's the human life cycle. If you damage or destroy any part of this cycle, you destroy humanity. If you say there is no God, you destroy humanity. If you say a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man, you destroy humanity. If you say marriage is not necessary, we can live together and have children without getting married, you destroy humanity. We start getting fruitfulness outside of marriage and being tempted to kill the babies or to throw them on the street. We do not understand that being a mother and being a father and being a husband and being a wife is an office with serious responsibility, and we treat each other like competitors for power. We destroy families, we divorce, we hurt our children, and we destroy the whole of the community. Now, if you have destroyed all this, the only thing you get is that this black arrow becomes very big. We lose many, many souls. But if we do a good job of keeping the whole cycle intact, then all the souls will find their way back to the Father. So this devil dies, goes to heaven, and is at the gate of heaven, and he's saying, but him he identifies as an angel. All right? And the angel tells him, yeah, we don't play that game up here. Yes? So we should also tell them, we don't play that game down here, isn't it? Now, I have told you the truth. The rest is up to you. All right? And St. Augustine said the truth is like a lion. You don't defend it. You just let it loose. It will defend itself. I hope you have understood the contrast between authentic sexuality and sexual and reproductive health, and you'll be able to make better choices. Thank you very much.
The presumption is that we asked questions as the doctor was talking, so we don't have any more questions, do we? Now I have a question. There's some questions, Doctor.
Oh, there are some questions. Yes.
Okay, given like everything that you said is very beautiful, and I'm just trying to understand how then one can separate the challenges that either women or men can face in the social setup. Like for example, how you were saying the part for the radical feminists, I believe, how like man can do better, that kind of mentality. Then how do you cure something like that if women are being oppressed in society, if women are being oppressed in terms of sexuality? How do you combat that?
So we go back and ask where the problem is. Okay? So in the African context, in the context of my community, there was no child who was more important than the other. All right? And when a child was born, the women would allurate so that we know whether it's a boy or a girl. Okay? But everybody was received with gratitude, because if it is a girl, then you know you have a new mother. If it is a boy, you have a new warrior. There was no problem about who has come. Okay? And there was no employment. If you were tilling your field, we'd come and help you, and then you come and help us with ours. It was always communal, work was communal. Then the colonialists came, and they came and they took away the land, and they called it theirs. Okay? And then they said, now you have to pay tax. All right? And for you to pay tax, you must work. But remember, you don't have land, isn't it? So even to eat, now you have to work. And that is how employment was introduced. Okay? And the colonialists would not employ women. They wanted a paid slave. So the only difference between the person, the servant, and the slave was that he got a small stipend for his work. They wanted somebody who could work from morning till evening, not take maternity leave, not do anything. So everybody who was employed was a man. Even the secretaries in the office were men. All right? And the issue was that if you grew older and now you needed to leave office, to leave the employment, there was always that question, do you have a boy who we can employ? All right? So remember, everybody was called a house boy, shamba boy, tanny boy, you remember? It was all boy, boy, boy. Now, of course, there is another connotation, because the colonialists believed that the most intelligent dark-skinned man was intelligent to the level of his 12-year-old. Okay? So they had a very different attitude. That's a different subject. But the idea was employment was for men. Okay? So you imagine a man who is retiring with that kind of environment. And the education has now come, and for you to get a job, you must be educated. Okay? The demand for the boy child becomes an issue. And people start feeling sad that they don't have boys, isn't it? Because now who will earn money for this family? Yes? And if you have a boy child, then you give that boy child. If you are to pay school fees, you don't have land. You have to earn what you are earning. And if you are to pay school fees for 2 children and you can't afford to pay for one, who would you pay for? You'd pay for the boy, isn't it? Because the girl will get married to a boy who is working and she'll be taken care of. Yes? So what brought the attitude of the boy being more important than the girl, and the girl being, the boy being educated and not the boy? Was it men? It was a system problem, isn't it? Today, the woman is still coming to work in a system that was designed for men to work, for men slaves. And she's not supposed to go for leave. She's not supposed to take maternity leave. And the day you get your second pregnancy, everybody is sneering. She's pregnant again. Look at her. What is wrong with you? Yes? So if you are to compete and keep up with the men in your office who you trained together, then getting pregnant is a big problem. Getting married is even worse because it means 2 or 3 children, isn't it? And you want to make sure you can earn money and own your own car, own your own piece of land. That attitude is not brought by men. It is brought by the owners of capital who have designed employment. So if that same person comes to you as a woman and tells you it is men who are sitting on you, it is men who are oppressing you, I'm not even an employer. I'm working in the same office as you. How can you tell me I'm oppressing you? Who brought that attitude? So you see, if we go back, we discover that it is a system that is wrong. And it was designed for men, and if women fit into that system, you destroy families. Yes? Now the right attitude would be, can a woman have a piece of land? Yes. Can a woman go to school? Yes. Can a woman be able to own property? Yes. But can a woman become a man? The answer is no. Okay? Can a man become a woman? The answer is no. So how do we then take care of these needs? We need families, we need children, and we still need women to contribute to the economy. How do we marry that? Now, my usual suggestion is, if you're a woman and you want to have a family, then you start the family early. Okay? So you finish college, start your family now, get your 3, 4 children. During those 10 years, don't take very senior jobs, don't take very demanding jobs so that you can enjoy the children. Okay? By the time the last born is 3 years old, now you can open up and start taking more demanding jobs, even if they include travel, isn't it? At least you've enjoyed your motherhood, you've enjoyed the children have a father, and you're able to then do other things. Okay? That is how we would solve the problem. It would mean that the woman, to understand she's not the man, means that you cannot compete with the people you finish college with. Because by the time you're getting your children for 10 years, they will be way ahead of you, isn't it? But you sacrifice that because you know family is more important than any degree you can ever give us. So if the woman is educated, she has a job, she has a good house, she has a piece of land, and she denies us children, then the world will still come to an end. Okay? So we find a solution that will keep your femininity and not confuse the looking for property or money to the need to having a family. Yeah. Mm. Yes.
Only 2 more questions. Can we keep them?
Thank you very much for this session. It's very, very good.
Mm.
And whatever you have taught, now the challenge is, we are just a few of us here with a lot of knowledge from you. How does this knowledge reach everybody in this country and if possible the world over? Because it is very necessary.
Yes, is
That's another question I'm asking. Then, we are talking about Christianity. How have the people, even if we are saying the system was brought by the colonialists and how we fought it out, and you're not a colonialist. We also need to ask, the people brought Christianity and the way we embraced it. Because we need to look, this is my own research. If we have to talk about the family, we just talk about Genesis chapter 1 and 2. What followed thereafter that? So how can we bring that back, that Genesis chapter 1 and 2, to be able to build the families that we want?
so
that even today, and that is a bit of why we are here, is if we go to the religions, fulfill the purpose of God and understand what it means for a husband and a wife to be. We have a lot to work on for all of us to be able to have peace.
True. Now you're asking, what can we do about it? We are already doing something about it by educating those who are available, isn't it? And this has been recorded. Hopefully somebody else will be able to learn. But the challenge is to make it a personal responsibility. Make it a personal responsibility. You ask those who are here, what can I do to get this information to others? Right? If I'm a teacher and I hear this being taught, can I be able to say there is something you're missing, the truth lies here? When it comes to Christianity, there is a big challenge the way it was brought to us. And we were told you cannot be a Christian and an African at the same time, so you had to give up one. It is not true. The idea is that we had a big challenge like that when a friend of mine the first daughter was getting married. And we were wondering how much African and how much Christian are we going to be in this relationship. And one gentleman came, he was invited to speak to us, and he said, it's not that difficult. You take your African culture and study it and know it very well, all right? Then you divide it into 3. And you look at all things that your culture does that are not offensive to Christian faith, and you keep those because they are good. And you look at all the things your culture does that are well-intentioned, but whose practice may be against the faith, and you modify to remove that which may not be consistent. And then you look at what is completely inconsistent with faith, and that you reject, okay? So like the naming of children, in the Kikuyu people name their children after their parents. So that is not offensive to Christians, and I do not have to have an English or Jewish name to become a Christian, yes? So I can keep the naming of our children. I can take a saint, like St. Paul, to be the saint for my child, but that name doesn't have to be the saint. So I can keep that. Now, wife inheritance was supposed to help protect the orphans and to protect the woman's inheritance in the absence of the husband. It was a very good thing. It is the community that chose who would inherit the woman, and it was allowed that you could have sex with her and have children. Now, if we take that under the Christian understanding, then having a father figure for the widow and the children is very important, and that would be done. But having sex with her to have children from my brother would then be inconsistent with my faith. So we modify. We can still be asked to be the role model, the father role model for this family, but we're not going to have sex with her. All right? And if she gets somebody else and gets married, then we release her, isn't it? Now, the animal sacrifice. There is no rain. We used to sacrifice and pour blood and libation so that God can hear our prayers and send rain, isn't it? Now, Christ died as a final sacrifice.
May I just add something there?
Do you, because there are other questions.
I just want that and finish. Then, we are here as a group. Then we need to put a lot of effort and see how you can collaborate with the Ministry of Education to put these things in the school curriculum.
That is very true, and it can happen, but it will need a champion like you. All right? Yes, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry. I hope it is shock-proof. Yes.
A great presentation from you. My question is regarding the truth. Question yet has whether it's relative or not, and then you end it with it that it's like a lion. You don't have to defend it; just let it loose. Now, to me, to say whether or not it's relative sounds very philosophical, and where do we stand, particularly in relation to the discussion we are having? If it is relative, does that make
The truth is not relative. The truth is objective. That's why it is the truth. There is only one truth. Anybody who gives you two truths is lying to you, is deceiving you. And if you have two people who cannot agree on something, then one of them is not standing on the truth.
But that's where we started from, if you go to the first slide.
Yes. Yes, so it is, truth is not relative. In fact, the definition of truth is it's objective. So think about natural law, for instance. Natural law is what you study in biology. So if I am male, I cannot be female. That's the truth. There is no relativity. Yes? You see maize, it is maize, it cannot be beans. That is truth. That the sun comes up from the east and sets in the west, and that day and night are different is truth. You are only studying what God has created. Yes? That is truth. It is not relative. So you cannot tell me that the sun shines during the night. Truth is objective, and by nature that is how. In fact, if you ask about knowledge, the true definition of knowledge is the understanding of truth. You can have a lot of information like we have on the internet, and you can know it, but you're not informed. Because whatever you're studying is not truth. You cannot say you're knowledgeable. So information and truth is not the same thing. Yes?
Doctor, thank you. When you say a child can be unplanned, it's still unwanted, yes, because the
Only in rape.
rape.
Only.
Yeah, and then you say we cannot condemn the child
Mm.
to death. In the instance where the mother goes to the hospital, the doctor tells the mother this child is having such and such a problem, a healthy problem, and yet still there is the other rape thing. How best can the mother?
So the mother has a pregnancy with a child with a disability. So can we solve the problem of disability by picking up all our disabled people and killing them? Is that how you want us to deal with disability? Why would it be different for a child who is unborn? What makes you think you have the right to kill a disabled child who is not yet born? But when they are born, you can't kill them. You see, if you don't learn to understand the dignity of life, you will be very confused. Life is given by God. None of us have a right over life. All right? And that child can be born without eyes, without ears. They can still function. Some of them may not even function. Some of them may even die soon after birth. But it is not us who made them abnormal. It is not the mother who made them disabled. That is what we have received. And our business is to look after the mother and the child, allow the child to be born, and then allow nature to take its course. All right? That's how we approach it, because we respect the dignity of life. There should be no difference between the child who is unborn and the one who is born. Otherwise, you're saying status means my dignity depends on status. Yes. Yes.
Please, is aborting an ectopic pregnancy justifiable?
An ectopic pregnancy, that's a good question. So, abort means bring to an end prematurely, is an English word, okay? Ectopic pregnancy means a pregnancy that is outside of the womb. That pregnancy is abnormal. It is a disease. And if it ruptures, it will kill the mother. So when I go to theater to operate on an ectopic pregnancy, I am going to remove a disease that may kill the mother. And because there is a baby in there, when I remove that pregnancy, that baby will die. Was my intention to kill the baby? Can I take the baby and put it in the womb? It is not technically possible. So I go to remove the abnormal pregnancy. The baby dies as a consequence of the treatment. That is not an abortion.
Okay.
Is not an abortion.
So, an ectopic pregnancy does not have a chance of survival, right?
There are a few, when it is detected late, if it is right in the fallopian tubes and the placenta attaches to other organs, like the intestines and others, ectopic pregnancies, babies can actually grow outside the womb. But when we pick them in medicine, it's because the mother is bleeding and she has pain. It has ruptured and something else. So the others don't give symptoms. I've had a case like that when I was training, where a woman passed dates. We tried inducing, she wasn't delivering. We went and did a cesarean and found the baby was completely outside the mother's womb. Okay? So the thing is, when it is in the fallopian tube and it ruptures, the story is done. Okay? But those are the ones that can be detected late because it slipped out, didn't cause any pain to the mother, she didn't feel anything, and it grows. Then you can't go and kill the baby and say, we have discovered.
Okay, good people. These questions can go on forever. Let's give a clap for Dr. Thank you for his persistent availability to the Pro-Life Fund for Family Court. Now, his topic was, what did he talk to us about? Anyone remembers? Authentic sexuality versus the SRHR way. Which way for the future? Now, from what you know now, which of the two is more consistent with a future that you want? The bulk of you are under 35 years old. I'm the old man here. Which of the two is more consistent with the future that you want? But you are aware that the United Nations system is pushing the SRHR understanding of sexuality. It's the reason we are here, to try and offer that alternative voice. Okay? Jerry, the guys who are meeting in Westlands are being paid how much per day? Hey, there are people who are meeting under the UN auspices. They're earning $30 a day for sitting down to push the SRHR stuff. Okay? They are your age mates. So it costs quite a bit to push a line. Okay? It costs quite a bit. And that's why Doctor was saying the truth is line, doesn't it? Defense, just believe it. So I'm standing up to challenge you to be part of the young people who are going to try and give a difference. Because the outcome of our gathering, as I said in the beginning, is going to be an outcome document, a youth declaration, in which you guys will make the statement of what you think should be the approach. So the work has just started. Okay? So I will invite you to go out, pick a cup of tea, come back and sit down as Wire talks to us, because we must be ready for the afternoon session when it comes. So some have food but cannot eat, some can eat but have no food.